All right, welcome back, everybody. I am back from break and just wanted to give everybody a major update on the Auretrix WebDriver for SparkLink PlayJoy keyboards. The project is alive and well. I've just been working between normal life things like school, work, and I'm in the process of buying a house and moving across the country here eventually. I have made progress. I just wanted to give everybody an update. I'm still in work on it and still doing the thing. So I originally started this project, if you haven't been following, as a solution to the Chinese keyboards. They use SparkLink PlayJoy version 1. The web drivers leave a lot to be desired. And, just a lot of things missing out of keyboards that come in this price point. So I started with Slice 75, which is a version 1. I bought a K1HE, which is also a version 1 SparkLink PlayJoy. And the reason I got it is I wanted to make sure that, as I'm doing this, that this is actually going to work. And it does. As you can see here, it is currently connected to the K1HE with no issues, and does everything I want it to. All the functionality I've been building does work. So the proof of concept has been proven and is working phenomenally. So moving on to the updates. So the one thing I wanted to do is I wanted to create a way for users to be able to create their keyboard layout. No matter what keyboard they had, what brand they had, they can always have a keyboard layout in the driver that represents what they are using. So the solution to that was the keyboard creator. So what this does is it automatically reads the columns and rows in your keyboard and gives you a default key count. So it automatically sets how many keys, how many rows, and how many columns, and gives you this default layout. This is the default layout for my K1HE. So I'll show you how quick and easy it is to sort of build your layout and then explain how it works with the 3 layers of default, so that you always have a representative keyboard for the driver. So each of these is the row 0 being this one, and so on and so forth. And this is the key counts. Like I said, you can tweak them and add keys, but you shouldn't need to, because at the end of the day, it's automatically detecting. So this should be correct. This is where you build the gaps after each row, so in between rows. And then down here is the preset sizes for keys with a fine-tuned millimeter adjustment, and then gaps after each key. And like I said, we will go through real quick and I'll show you how easy it is to build your keyboard layout so that you always have a representative keyboard. So here I'm going to build the keyboard after the top function row keys here of 4.2 millimeters. And that simple. Is already built the gap. Now I'm going to build the gaps after the actual keys here. And we're going to add a 4.2 gap after these as well, just to start getting this layout going here. And then we have the backspace key, which is a 2U. We're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to add also the same gap here, 4.2. And we're going to start building out the rest of these. And so this is a 1.5U keys here. And then I'm going to build the gap just after the 1 key. And you can see it's already coming along here. And then here and here, I got 2.25U key. Again, just using the selector for the standard key sizes. And then this one is a 1.75. And you can see this is quickly coming along and just really easy to make your keyboard layout. So this one is going to be a 2.75U here. This is the right shift. And I'm going to add a bigger gap to sort of center that out. And I am cheating a little bit because I already sort of know what the gapping is, but it's easy to fine tune and sort of get it going. The bottom row here, this is going to be the Control, Windows, Alt, left side. That's the space bar, so I'm not going to do that one. This is the Alt, FN, Windows Control on the right side. And these are 1.25U keys here. And then I'm going to do my space bar, which 6.5U. And I'm going to add my 4.2 millimeter gap after this key here. And it's a little long, as you can see here. So I'm going to shrink down this space bar just a tad to get that lined up. A little short here, it looks like, so I'm going to probably expand this key just a hair, actually, to 50. Oops, didn't select that one. That was my bad. 54.2. I'm going to go 52.4 to get that sort of lined up there. There we go. That lines up good. And then I'm going to fix my mistake here. Get rid of this gap. And then make this a 6.5U once again. And shrink it down just a hair to get this lined up. And that's it. I'm done. Keyboard layout is created. And once you save that, you're good to go. Saves it to local storage. It'll automatically load it when you go into the other things. So if I go to key travels, right, it is now using the correct keyboard layout. Back to the keyboard creator. Once you save it, it is available in your local storage, so you can always reload it if you want to make some changes and fine tune it. And you can also export the layout and import it back. In case you clear your cookies or something like that, you delete your web browser data, you could always bring it back. So when I say this has 3 layers of default, I'll explain what that is real quick. So the first layer is going to be the keyboard layout that you create and save to local storage. The second layer is going to be the actual web driver and whether or not that keyboard brand, so this one K1HE, is saved to the driver sort of keyboard layouts, and I'll use that. The last layer is just like a generic key count, more popular keyboard sort of layout thing that is probably not as accurate, but at the end of the day, you have 3 layers that you can do. So once you create your keyboard layout, if it is not saved to the driver, this share button will be enabled. If it is saved to the web driver, it's already saved into the driver, then this will be disabled. So this isn't saved to the driver, and I did that specifically so I can show you. You will need a free GitHub account. GitHub is free. If you get a GitHub account, you click this share button here, and you will be able to create an issue. It pre-fills out this form for you. You don't have to do anything besides hit create, and it would automatically send this to me, and then it will give me everything I need so I can add it to the keyboard driver so that if somebody else logs in or uses the Auretrix web driver and they have a K1HE and it's now saved to the driver, they don't have to make their own driver layout at the end of the day. So 3 layers, like I said, your layout that you create and save. Second layer checks the driver. Third layer, it just uses like a generic key count sort of layout. So yeah, that works flawlessly. Really happy with how that came out. I think this builds the sort of community aspect I was going for. And like I said, it's free for the user. GitHub is free. You just create a GitHub account and you can share. If you don't want to share, then you can always create your layout. So either way, it works. You're not relying on the community, but the community option to share is there. Nothing really changed in calibration or key travels. I already went over these in other videos. I think the only thing I did change was I smoothed out some of the UI responses for some of these. As far as the key travels and stuff, I fixed some of the UI aspects and stuff like that. But overall, it works really well. And really didn't change any of the UI functionality, just some of the performance stuff that's web browser related was improved. The one thing I did finish up was the lighting portion. And that's why I had this keyboard here. I know it may be a little hard to see, but you can see that currently it's set to white. You can do everything. I sort of streamlined the UI compared to the original web driver. So you could, turn on and off the lights very easily. You can adjust the brightness, right? Your sleep timer. It's more drop downs and on the same tab than how they had it on the original web driver, which was like everything was spread out. And I didn't like it, not even a little bit. So here, instead of just the mode 1, mode 2, this, that, I actually named these something a little more representative so you can sort of see, right? That looks like a wave to me, so that's what I named it. If you don't like the names, you can, create your own driver and name them anything you want. But, this one, I thought it was shaped like a wheel. It's spinning, so it's wheel. And this one was too, so it's wheel too. But besides that, I think the best improvement I made is, so with these keyboards and the key switches, sometimes you get like a Jade Green Pro, which has that, you set the key to white and you always get that green hue. But everybody knows you can sort of fine tune that color to sort of make it as white as possible by adding a little red. But doing that on the sort of original, Chinese made driver, it's kind of difficult to do that because it doesn't give you a live representation. So what I did with this is, as you are changing this static color, it is giving you a live representation. So as I slide this slider around, right, it is changing the color live on the keyboard. So here I'll switch the slider to blue here. And you can sort of see that go live. And the reason I did that is, like I said, it gives you the ability to sort of fine tune those colors to offset the key switch housing color to get you as representative as possible a color. And here you got the quick select, so you can select all, select WASD, select letters and numbers. And then for custom lighting, which is the per key RGB, which is down here, right, you can select WASD and set those to a color. So how this one works is it will update the UI as you change the color, right? And I'm gonna set it to white so you could see it on the keyboard here if possible. But it will not update the keyboard until you click out of it, and then boom, it then sets the key lights as you can see here. So if I set those back to black, which is essentially just off, right, you can still see they're on, but once I click out, then they change. So you can select like that, or you also have the option, if you hold shift and then sort of drag, you can select a section, and then sort of the same thing, you can then, live pick a color on the UI here. And then when you release, you see that it's updated here. And I'll show you again for, this section here. If I want to make these white, then I'll make these white. And like I said, you'll get your per key RGB. And there you go, as you get the per key RGB. Select all. I'm going to just turn these off. And then I'm going to just set it to static. And like I said, you can see it is working fantastically. And like I said, you get the live updating on the static color. If that's what you want to do, it does update real time as you shift these color wheels around. So pretty happy with how that came out. The other section I did, so the one section that is left to do is really the advanced section. I need to build out the dynamic keystroke, multi-point triggers, the mod tap, toggle, and SOCD and macro. And some of those are easier than others, so they should get built out pretty quick. But like I said, I'm doing this in between a lot of other life things. But I did add a sort of question mark here. So if you hover over the question mark, it explains what each one does in the simplest terms as possible. So to give us, the user, a better understanding of each one does, because they do have a different use. But if you don't know what it is, then it's sort of hard to decide if this is what you want to use. That's the section that is left. I did get profiles built and working. So as you can see right now, I have my daily set to white, and then my gaming, and you can rename these. You just click on there, type it in, and it'll rename them. And then if I switch, right, easily switches to the gaming profile, which is a different color, and a couple other different settings that I have. I have rapid trigger keys set on this one specifically. So if I switch to my daily, you can see I have no rapid trigger settings on that one, and it changes the colors here. The export profile is close to working. There's a couple of glitches I need to fix. It's not exporting all the settings that I want, but that's just because I'm using some of the incorrect calls, and I just need to go in and figure those out. The point of the export profile is every now and then, I mean, these computers, freak out and you got to do a factory reset. And instead of having to go in and redo all your settings for each of your profiles, it will export the current selected profile settings so you can save it somewhere. And then if you have to do a factory reset, you can just import them back in. Or, right, if like, say even you get like sort of this base working profile, and you don't want to have to, and most of your other profiles are going to be sort of similar with some smaller tweaks, then you can even just go in and export that profile and then import them into the other profiles as the baseline, and then tweak those and then re-export them. So it gives you a couple options of one, just as a backup for the current profile settings that you have, or two, as a baseline for the rest of the profiles that are in here that you can switch to build upon without having to redo everything from scratch. And like I said, export, say your friend has the same keyboard and he wants to copy your gaming settings because he likes your keyboard setup, you can export it, and if he has the same keyboard, he can import it in to his profile, and it'll work. The debug export is for me. So when you export, the SDK encrypts the file. The debug essentially exports it unencrypted so that I can sort of view the settings and make sure that what I need exported is being exported. And that's really all that's for. So that won't be available. That's just for while I'm working. Down here, I created a quick settings section that easily lets you just set the polling rate and the system mode and do a factory reset. I didn't like having to go dig for those in wherever they're kept in the original driver. So you can easily just go here and change your polling rate if you want. And when it does a polling rate change, it does restart the keyboard to reflect the new polling rate. And when you reset, it does automatically check the polling rate to give you where you're currently set at. And then I'll just switch it back. And like I said, it does a restart. And just give it a quick refresh and boom, everything's back. And it is on the correct polling rate. System mode easily changed from Windows to Mac if that's what you want to do. Figure if it's going to be compatible with Mac and Windows, might as well make it easy to switch between the two without having to dig that setting out. And then factory reset is there because sometimes they do freeze up or glitch out. Factory reset fixes most things, but with being able to import your profile, it's not as tedious having to go back in and redo your settings. You just import your old profile and it's good to go. For me, as I'm doing this, I do freak out my keyboards quite a bit as I make mistakes, and a factory reset happens at a minimum once a day when I'm working on this. So for me, having it right there makes life a little easier when I have to factory reset it, so I can continue testing and developing. Really, after this, after I finish the advanced sections and fix a bit of the profile exporting, this will be completed and be available. And then the next development that I will incorporate into this is the version 2 Sparkling PlayJoy, which they do have keyboards that are using a version 2, but implementation, incorporation into the Auretrix driver will be much easier. And because, like I said, most of the UI stuff is not going to change. It's already built. It's going to be a matter of like an if-then situation. Like if you're on version 1, use these calls. If you're on version 2, use these calls. But this is going to essentially turn into a one-stop shop for no matter what Chinese Sparkling PlayJoy keyboard version you're using. You will be able to use this WebDriver for that. While I was developing this, I did get some bad news that I came to realize quickly, is that these keyboards firmware does not natively support controller emulation. But, and I say but, I have already thought of a way to sort of work around that. It will have to be an external application that runs in the background of your computer, where you could go in and essentially set controller emulation, but there's no way to do it with a WebDriver. I mean, there could, but you'd have to leave the WebDriver open, and it would have to be constantly up, and the delay between the internet and all that could lead to problems. So the best solution is to create a separate application that only handles the controller emulation side of the keyboard. And a quick gist of it is it will essentially be placed into raw Hall effect mode, where it's reading the depths and then converts it into an Xbox controller sort of reading. So it is doable. It isn't going to be a separate application though. That will have to be installed and ran in the background. But it should work. I'll just have to prove the concept, but from everything I've been reading and the research I've been doing, I can make controller emulation work on these, just not natively supported because of the firmware limitations. But with that, with the controller emulation, that will probably not be freeware. It'll probably be the price of buy me a coffee, like I said, and more than likely just donation based, if anything, just to help support and keep the project going, because now that would be two separate projects. The driver itself, this that we're seeing now, is completely freeware, will be available for anybody to use, contribute to. And the controller emulation application for this, like I said, may cost you a cup of coffee donation for a lifetime controller emulation and update support on that. I think a one-time fee to get that going is small, and it just helps support the project because it is time consuming. Ultimately, I would like to go the route of developing my own keyboard using SparkLink, PlayJoy, but ultimately making my firmware a sort of open source firmware to just sort of open up these keyboards and make it so that we could get these things to a better price point. There's no reason, right? And I know, what is it, QMK, Via, whatever, do the open source thing, and a lot of people jump that way because of that. But competition's always healthy, and I want to provide competition if possible, and really mainly to help drive down the prices of keyboards and improve the community and give, like I said, just give people options. Well, that's all I got. Appreciate everybody's sort of interest in this project. Continue to share, continue to, sort of show people, what's going on here and sort of the implications of this. I think it's big for everybody. I think it's big for the community, and I'll continue to work on it. I know it's sort of a niche sort of thing, but I have fun doing it, and if it helps the community out, I'm happy to do it. All right, everybody. Thank you. I appreciate your support, and I'll continue to provide updates. Like I said, next big ticket items are in the dynamic keystroke and these advanced things here. But some of these should go faster than others, as they're pretty straightforward and simple. It's just a matter of finding the time. But I do appreciate everybody, and just wanted to give everybody an update. Thank you. Have a good one, guys.